Well, we're working on the YJ again, and you can see I still don't have any inner fenders on this thing, and that's pretty much the last piece we need to bolt the front up, but we got some new fenders from Genright. I think this is gonna look pretty cool. Oh. The Jeep has been doing really well off-road, but we still want to lower it to get that lower center of gravity, and with this size tire, we had to put some really high fenders on the YJ. Well, it's time to finish that up. We need to do the fender liners. Yeah, so this engine bay is wide open with these big old high fenders on here. And on this side, it's not as much of an issue, but over there we have all that stuff that needs to sit on an inner fender. For a while, I talked about just making my own because I do have the press brake back there. And, you know, I thought I was gonna have the time to do it, but I really don't. And finally getting to that time in my life, the season of my life right now where I'm willing to pay for things I normally thought I wouldn't. I'm at the point now where I would almost pay somebody to do this for me, even though I like working on these Jeeps and stuff. It's just the time is so tight. Next weekend we have a trail run that we're supposed to take the Jeep on because the Samurai is broke right now. We still have to do inner fenders and oil pan, oil pickup, bleed some brake. We've got a lot of stuff to do still, so I don't know if I'm going to make it due to the time. That being said, instead of making my own inner fenders, decided to go with the Genright inner fenders. So here's the weird thing though. I kind of talked about this in our high fender video. Genright doesn't make any inner fenders for the high fenders on a YJ, which seems really weird, but when I was talking with the guys over the phone, they were saying, hey, look, I put these on my CJ or my YJ, and I just used the TJ inner fenders, and you have to make a few cuts. So we're gonna trim it up and make it fit. Hopefully the body lift that's in there right now will help us have a little bit of wiggle room. Don't know. The good news is Genright sends a killer product out. These look really clean, and the directions are really awesome. Check these out. So here's the directions, and they have just really detailed colored pictures in them. Super helpful when you're doing something like this. I think that's really gonna help out with this install, helping it go smooth. I'm gonna keep these bare aluminum just because I kind of like that look. It's gonna be under a black fender, and I have some other aluminum or you know, raw steel accents on the Jeep, so I think that's gonna look better. It's also gonna save me some time because we don't have to paint it. Who knows, might paint it later. But the first step looks like to actually just fully install these fenders, as in putting the sides, the tops, and any braces that are with it on. So hopefully that's not going to be too much of a problem with our fitment. We're just going to get those built, and then we're going to start trying to fit them and figure out where we need to cut to get them to bolt on. All right, so here's one kind of loosely put together. We're going to start fitting it in there and seeing if we can even get it to fit like this. Hopefully I assembled it right, and we'll see if we need to make any cuts, and if so, where. So I can't even really get it started yet because you can see the fender has to go behind right here. This is sticking in front of it. So I think what we're gonna do is take this fuse box off, gonna unbolt that piece of metal, this one that's right here. And if we can't unbolt that, we'll just cut it off because now we're gonna have a lot more fender to mount stuff on, so it shouldn't be a problem to lose that. Well, this would have been a great job for a Sawzall to get in those tight spots. We just used the angle grinder, kind of a crude cut down there, but basically just went straight down and freed up all the stuff. So I think we got enough wiggle room now. Let's try to fit this again. There's this little piece that I think is gonna have to get cut off because I can't get it behind there. It looks better already. All this real estate we'll have on the top. And this is probably the coolest part, is having all of these little nuts right here. So any clips you have, like this one right here, can just get bolted on there for a really clean look. All right, I'm gonna make some marks. Gotta make some cuts. I'm trying to start small with these cuts so we don't just like cut way too much off because I don't really have a way to put it back on. But this rear part, we're gonna cut this off about an inch going down and then just terminating back into the liner there. So it shouldn't look too different. It's just gonna give us a little bit more room in the bottom. There's probably gonna be a little bit of a gap on there, but that's fine. I'm not too worried about that. The last part is right here. I don't really have a spot for that to go in here, so I'm gonna try to follow this line and then continue all the way up. And then hopefully with those cuts, we can make this work. Made our cuts, got the fender mounted up. See right there, we probably took off just a tiny bit too much right there, but it's fine. It doesn't look too crazy. You can see we've got a nice gap along the bottom because we have our huge body lift in there. we're gonna end up lowering the body about 2 inches. So we might have to trim right there, but overall this fit, I'd say, looks pretty good for not belonging on a YJ. One issue we do have is right here. You can see I had to cut this all off right here because it just wasn't gonna fit in there. You can see where it's scratching up the paint. Got a little bit of a gap right here, and then these 4 holes weren't even close to lining up. We have that press brake in the background. I think what we're gonna do is get a piece of aluminum later on, put it in here, and we'll put a bend in it to match right here so we can bolt that in and fill this gap. But purely cosmetic, I mean, it actually looks pretty good down there. We've got the little screen to throw in right there. Got our screen we can throw in right there. But this is the big part. Like, look at how much room we have in here to mount different things. So we can mount all of these wires, get some more of these clamps, wrap them around, and then we can just stick them on here. We'll have our wires just bolted down, running along the side there. And that should look great. Since we cut off the bracket that holds this fuse box on, we're gonna have to find a new way to mount that. But that's just plastic. If there is room inside this box, it'd be great if we could just mount it on these 2 bolts right here, kind of just sit up at an angle like that, which would be totally cool with me. But that was the easy side. Now we've got to start working on the driver's side. We've got this ABS setup, we've got our air filter, and there's just a lot of stuff going on this side and not a ton of wiggle room. I don't know, looking pretty good. I think this is gonna work out well. I think our engine bay is gonna be a lot cleaner after this too, having that aluminum on both sides. Even when you have really good directions and it's the right part, it can be frustrating to do an install like this. Well, when it's a part for a different Jeep, you can get a little frustrated with it, but I mean, it's just metal, and usually you can cut, you can drill and all of that, and you can make it work. And I think that's one of the fun things about doing projects like these. Well, everything's pretty much buttoned up now. See, we've got this bolted down. We did have to drill 2 new holes for that, but they're the same type of hardware, so they're just gonna blend in. And then we've got our reservoir tucked in back here for the coolant, and we did have to drill only 1 hole for that. And here's those other 2, but you know, they kind of just blend in with everything else. We were able to use the existing hardware nuts up there to kind of bolt some extra stuff on. Speaking of which, this flat platform right here is really clean, and then it allows us to use these little tube clamps to put on here, and this one's holding down that coolant reservoir hose. If we go to the other side, you can see this is the harness that goes to the winch, and it's just bolted nicely along the side using the existing hardware, so we didn't have to drill any new holes for that. Same thing with our fuse box over here. We just drilled 2 holes in the side of the plastic down there, and we were able to use that same hardware. It's actually these 2 bolts right up top. You can see my fingerprints all over them. I got some grease up in there, but it's all just aluminum, so we'll just wipe it down and dry it off nice and shiny next time we get a wash on this thing. I think overall this install went pretty well. This has really cleaned up those loose ends on the engine bay, and after installing them, the sides just look so much cleaner. The wiring's routed a lot cleaner, and I feel like it's just a good look overall. So super satisfied with this install. Definitely recommend it. If you're interested in running high fenders, I think there are some cheaper options out there than Genright, and it's probably a little bit easier to install too. But this look, this functionality, this quality, I think is really hard to beat. If you want that old school Jeep look, I think this is the best way to do it. Get these nice big flat fenders on there. I mean, for me, we've got too much lift in the front right now. I think when this comes down, this is gonna look really awesome, and it's gonna be cool to have barely wider than normal Jeep width axles with a pretty low center of gravity. So I think that mix is gonna be really fun on the trail. My saving grace on this whole install for sure was the hardware store. I just kept going there and getting these little nuts and bolts because the directions tell you make sure you keep the ones from your old fenders, but for us it's a different Jeep, so we didn't have anything left over, and if we did, I don't think they were the same ones anyways. Yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully you'll get some good shots of this later on when we get the Jeep out of the garage. We've got a few more things to do before we get this thing driving on the road, but the goal is this weekend, so hopefully in a couple days I'll get these things done. If you have any questions, make sure you put them down in the comments, and if you want to see what's going to happen with the YJ in the future as far as builds, wheeling, all that stuff, definitely consider subscribing so you can check that stuff out with us. Thanks for checking this video out. See you guys next time.